I wasn't planning on stopping. I really wasn't. The laundromat was just another stop between the rain and my place, and I only ducked in because the awning outside wasn't doing its job. My sneakers were wet through, my shirt clinging to my back. I thought I'd wait out the worst of it, maybe buy a soda from the machine, keep to myself. But she was there. She always was, it seemed. Mrs. Hale, though she told me once to stop calling her that, sat in the corner folding towels like she had all the time in the world. Mid-40s, maybe older. Dark hair tied back, sleeves rolled to her elbows. There was nothing glamorous about it, just her steady hands, the way she smoothed each crease like it mattered. I nodded when our eyes met, a small gesture. She smiled, small too, the kind you could miss if you weren't looking. "You're drenched," she said. I glanced down at myself. Yeah. Guess I lost the race against the storm. She let out a short laugh, quiet, almost to herself, before going back to folding. But she didn't look away for long. I caught her eyes flicking back once, maybe twice. I sat on the plastic chair near the soda machine, tapping my phone screen just to have something to do. Drafted a text I wouldn't send, "You up?" Then deleted it. My thumb hovered over another name in my contacts but stopped there too. The hum of the dryers filled the silence. A clock ticked overhead, louder than it should have been. I could smell the detergent, sharp and clean, almost too clean. She broke the quiet first. "No laundry today?" I blinked up, caught. "Oh. No. Just waiting out the rain." She raised a brow, still folding, still neat. Strange place to wait. I tried to laugh it off. Guess I liked the sound of the machines. That made her actually smile this time. Not wide, but real. She folded another towel, slower now, like she wasn't rushing to finish. I realized I was staring when she shifted in her seat. My eyes dropped to my hands. I fiddled with the pull tab of the soda can I hadn't even opened yet. "You live next door to me, don't you?" she asked suddenly. I looked up. "Yeah. Apartment 3B. I've seen you in the hall." Her eyes lingered on me in that way that felt heavier than casual recognition. She gave a small nod, like she was filing the fact away. The rain outside eased, tapping softer against the glass. I thought about standing, leaving before it grew awkward. I even shifted forward in my chair, ready to go. But then she spoke again, softer this time, almost an afterthought. "You could stay a little longer." I froze. The words weren't loaded, not obviously. She said them like it was nothing, like an offer of tea or another round of laundry. But the air in the room seemed to change with them, heavier, warmer. I nodded, because what else was I going to do? My throat felt dry. "Yeah. Sure." And so I sat back down, pretending to check my phone again. But I wasn't looking at the screen. I was watching the way her fingers brushed against fabric, how she paused over a towel longer than she needed to, as if she'd just realized she'd said too much. The dryers hummed, the clock ticked, and the rain slowed to a drizzle outside. Later, when I finally walked home, I found myself replaying her words, turning them over like a coin in my hand. "Stay a little longer." I couldn't decide if it was an invitation, or just a kindness. Either way, it was the first time I didn't delete the draft text waiting on my phone. I was coming back from class, arms full of books I'd picked up from the library, when I saw her at the mailbox in the lobby. She was frowning at a stack of envelopes, flipping one over like it held bad news. When she noticed me, her face shifted into something softer, though not quite a smile. "Carrying the whole library?" she asked. I shrugged, awkward. "Just, stuff for a paper." She nodded, tucking the unopened envelope into her bag. "I used to read like that. Before the house got quieter." The words hung there. She didn't explain, and I didn't press, but I caught the way her fingers tightened on the strap of her bag. We walked up the stairs together. I was hyper-aware of the echo of our steps, how close her shoulder was to mine. At her door, she paused, key in hand. "Tea?" she asked, as if it were the most ordinary thing. I said yes before I had time to think. Inside, her apartment smelled faintly of citrus cleaner and something warm, maybe cinnamon. It felt lived in, books stacked on the table, a throw blanket draped over the couch. She busied herself in the kitchen, rattling mugs, while I stood there pretending to study a painting on the wall. Milk, sugar, she called. Just plain, I said. She brought the cups over, steam curling between us. She sat across, legs crossed under her, holding her mug with both hands. For a while, we didn't speak, and I wondered if I should make an excuse to leave. But then she asked, "Do you ever get tired of people asking what you're going to do with your life?" The question startled me. All the time. Her lips twitched. Same. Only, in my case, it's what I did with it. There was a silence that wasn't empty, but heavy, like we'd stumbled into something neither of us meant to. I caught myself staring at the ring on her finger, no longer there, just a faint line where it must have been. I looked away quickly, pretending to sip my tea though it was still too hot. My mind kept circling questions I didn't dare ask. Was she divorced? Widowed? Was I imagining that she looked at me too long sometimes? She leaned back, watching me. "You're quiet," she said. I managed a half-smile. "You don't seem to mind." Her laugh was soft, almost surprised. Then, for a moment, she reached across the table, just to move a book that was teetering on the edge, nothing more. But her hand brushed mine as she did, light as a breath. I didn't pull back. She didn't either. The moment passed, covered neatly with her clearing her throat and asking about my classes. But I kept feeling that touch long after I left, carrying it upstairs with me like something I wasn't supposed to have, but couldn't let go of. It happened on a Wednesday, though it could have been any day. The hallway smelled faintly of dust and rain. I was juggling my keys when her door opened, sudden, like she'd been waiting for the sound. "Hey," she said, softer than usual. I turned, trying not to look like I'd been hoping for this. "Hey." She leaned against the frame, arms folded. "I made too much soup. Thought, maybe you'd want some." I laughed under my breath, more to steady myself than anything. "Free food? I'm not saying no." Inside, it felt different this time. The lights were low, a lamp on in the corner, everything warmer, closer. She set 2 bowls down on the small table, sliding one toward me. I noticed her hands shake just slightly as she adjusted the spoon. We ate in near silence. The soup was good, though I couldn't taste much. My attention kept snagging on her, the way her hair slipped loose around her face, how she pushed it back absent-mindedly. She caught me staring once. Didn't say anything, just looked down at her bowl, stirring slow circles. I wanted to fill the quiet. "You, cook a lot?" She smiled without lifting her eyes. "Not really. Only when I don't want to think." The words lodged somewhere in me. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. We both laughed, short, awkward. Halfway through, there was a knock at her door, sharp, ordinary. She froze, spoon in midair. "Mom," a voice called. A man's. Younger than I expected. Her eyes flicked to mine, wide. Then, quickly, she stood, pressing a finger to her lips before opening the door just a crack. "A boy? No, not a boy. My age. Maybe a year older." He handed her a bag, some leftover takeout, talking about his car needing new brakes. She nodded, kept her voice steady, but her body angled so I couldn't be seen from the table. When she closed the door, the silence was heavier than before. "That was," I started, then stopped. "My son," she said quickly. "He doesn't live here. Just drops by." I nodded, though something in my chest tightened. After that, the air between us was different. We finished our food slower, both careful with our words. But then, when she stood to clear the bowls, her hand brushed my shoulder, lingering a second longer than needed. My skin burned where she touched. She set the dishes down, turned back toward me. And for the briefest moment, it felt like everything narrowed, her eyes on mine, the space between us shrinking, her breath close enough to feel. I leaned forward, not even meaning to, just drawn. Her lips parted, like she might say something, maybe stop me, maybe not. But the lamp flickered, buzzing sharp in the silence. I blinked, pulled back a fraction too late. She exhaled, shaky. "It's late," she whispered, though neither of us moved. The pause between what almost happened and what didn't stretched long. Long enough to know the line was there, waiting. It wasn't planned, again. Nothing ever was with her. We crossed paths outside the building just as the sun was going down, the air still damp from a late afternoon shower. She was carrying a bag of groceries, light enough that I offered to take it without thinking. "You don't have to," she said, though she let me anyway. We walked side by side down the narrow street, our reflections catching in the wet pavement. She told me about the store being out of her favorite tea, nothing important, but her voice had a worn edge to it. "Do you miss it?" I asked. She glanced at me. "Miss what?" "Having someone to walk with." "To?" "I don't know." "Share the tea with." Her mouth pressed into a line. For a while, all I heard was the sound of my shoes scuffing against the sidewalk. Finally, she said, "You're too young to be asking things like that." I smiled, weak. Too young, or too close? That stopped her. She turned, right there under the orange streetlight, eyes sharp in the dim glow. "You shouldn't say things like that." But she didn't walk away. I shifted the bag in my arms, nerves sparking in my chest. "I wasn't," my voice cracked. I tried again. "I wasn't trying to make it weird." Her laugh was soft, but not amused. More like a sigh. "It's already weird, isn't it?" We stood there, the bag of groceries between us, like proof of how ordinary this should have been. My hand tightened on the plastic handle until it bit into my skin. "I don't know what you want," she said finally. Quiet. Barely above the sound of cars in the distance. I swallowed. "I don't either." Her gaze flicked over my face, searching for something. I thought about all the times I'd almost asked if she was lonely, if the silence in her apartment pressed on her the way mine did. But the words felt dangerous, so I let them stay unspoken. We started walking again, slower this time. At the bench near the park entrance, she stopped, easing the bag from my hands. She sat, patting the space beside her. I hesitated, then joined her. The air smelled of wet earth, leaves still dripping from the rain. "Sometimes," she said after a long pause, "I wish I could forget how old I am." The confession hung there, raw and steady. She didn't look at me as she said it, just stared straight ahead at the darkening trees. Without thinking, I reached for her hand. My fingers brushed hers, barely a touch. She didn't pull away. Instead, she let out a shaky laugh. "This is trouble," she whispered. Her hand stayed under mine, warm, still. And for a moment, brief, dangerous, it felt like she wasn't just talking about herself. The next day, she wasn't there. I lingered in the lobby longer than I should have, pretending to check the bulletin board, the mail slots, anything. Usually by that time of evening, I'd hear her door open, her footsteps soft against the tile. But nothing. I told myself it didn't matter. That I wasn't waiting. By the third day, I knew I was lying. When I finally saw her again, it was outside, sun low, her car door open. She was dressed differently, sharper somehow. Not the loose sweaters and rolled sleeves I'd grown used to, but a fitted jacket, heels that clicked against the pavement. She looked younger, almost, though maybe it was just the way she held herself. She noticed me right away. And for the first time, she didn't smile. "Going somewhere?" I asked, too casual. "Dinner," she said, sliding into the driver's seat. Her tone left no room for questions. I nodded, though the word caught in my chest. "Dinner? With who?" The taillights blurred red in the dusk as she drove off. That night, I sat at my desk, phone in hand. Drafted something reckless. Did I do something? Deleted it. Wrote again, "Are you okay?" Deleted that too. My screen glowed back at me, stubborn and empty. When I finally gave up, I found myself staring at the wall, the faint sound of the TV from her apartment bleeding through. Laughter. A man's voice. I wasn't sure. The next morning, we crossed paths at the mailboxes. She looked tired, dark circles under her eyes, hair loose and unbrushed. She muttered a hello, but her voice was clipped, rushed. I wanted to ask, where were you? Who was that? But I didn't. I just nodded, stuffing my hands deep into my pockets. She hesitated before walking away. It's better if we don't, she started, then stopped, shaking her head. Never mind. Better if we don't what? I wanted to demand it, but the words froze in my throat. Later that night, I sat in the laundromat, the machines humming, the seat beside me empty. Her absence was louder than her presence had ever been. I typed one more message, fingers trembling over the screen, I miss sitting with you. I didn't send it. Just saved it in drafts, the way I always did. And when I finally stood to leave, I glanced at her window across the alley. The light was on, the curtain half drawn. I thought about knocking, about asking if I was imagining the shift between us. But I didn't. Instead, I walked past her door, my footsteps too loud in the hall, and let the silence answer me. It was late when it happened. Later than I'd ever knocked on her door before. I hadn't planned to. My feet carried me there anyway, past the hum of the vending machine in the lobby, past the peeling paint on the stair rail. I stood in front of her apartment, hand hovering, nearly pulling back twice. Then I knocked, soft, almost hoping she wouldn't answer. She did. Her hair was loose, a cardigan wrapped around her shoulders. No makeup. Just her. She blinked at me, surprised, but didn't close the door. Something wrong? She asked. I shook my head. No. I just couldn't sleep. The words felt too small for the weight of them. She hesitated, then stepped back. Come in. The apartment was dim, only the kitchen light on. She poured water into 2 glasses, set one in front of me at the counter. We sat there in silence, both staring at the condensation running down the sides. Finally, she said, you shouldn't be here. I know. My voice cracked. But I didn't want, I stopped, shaking my head. I don't know what I wanted. Her hands tightened around the glass. This isn't simple. I have a son your age. I have a life, one that doesn't make space for me, I finished. Her eyes flicked to mine. Pain there. But not denial. The silence stretched. My chest felt tight, like every breath was too much. I keep telling myself it's nothing, I admitted. Just neighbors, just conversations. But then I walk past your door and, my voice faltered. It doesn't feel like nothing. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She pressed a hand to her temple, as if steadying herself. You make me feel, she exhaled, sharp. You make me forget myself. And that terrifies me. I looked at her, really looked. The lines of exhaustion at her eyes, the strength in her posture even now. She wasn't some mystery. She was just, her. Human. I reached out, slow, hesitant, and covered her hand with mine. She didn't pull away. I'm not asking for forever, I said quietly. I just didn't want to keep pretending. Her gaze softened, breaking at the edges. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she turned her hand under mine, lacing her fingers through. The clock ticked on the wall. The fridge hummed. My heart beat too loud. Finally, she whispered, okay. Not a promise. Not an answer to everything. Just that. But her hand stayed in mine. And in the quiet of her kitchen, with nothing resolved and everything exposed, it felt like enough. Time passed, though not in any dramatic way. No one made announcements. No one drew lines. We just kept finding each other. At first, it was small things. I'd come home late, and there would be an extra portion of soup left outside my door, covered in foil. Or she'd borrow a book and return it with a slip of paper tucked inside, a note about which line stayed with her. Other nights, she'd knock softly, ask if I wanted tea. Plain, right? She'd say, already filling the kettle. And I'd answer the same every time, though I liked the way she remembered more than the tea itself. We didn't talk about the line we'd almost crossed in her kitchen. But something shifted after that night. The silence between us stopped feeling dangerous. It just felt shared. One Saturday morning, we walked to the park, groceries forgotten on the counter. The bench was still damp from last night's rain, but she sat anyway, patting the space beside her. We didn't say much. Just watched the trees drip. At one point, she leaned against me, not fully, just enough that I felt the warmth of her shoulder. "You're quiet," I said, half smiling. "You don't seem to mind," she murmured, almost exactly what I'd said to her once. We both laughed, soft, knowing. The days settled into their own rhythm. Not every evening, not every meal, but enough. Enough that when I passed her door, I didn't wonder if she wanted me there. I already knew. Sometimes her son came by. She'd send me a quick glance, almost apologetic, and I'd keep to my place. I understood. This was fragile, complicated. But it was ours. One night, as we sat on her couch, the clock clicked over to 8:47 p.m., a time I only noticed because I'd caught myself memorizing the way the light hit her face then. She saw me glance at the clock and asked, "What?" "Nothing," I said, though I smiled. "Just 8:47, she raised a brow, amused but curious. "And that means?" "Means you'll probably never know," I said. Her laugh was quiet, shaking her head, but I saw the way her eyes softened. Like she understood more than I gave away. We never labeled it. We didn't need to. It wasn't about declarations. It was about the grocery bags carried up the stairs, the folded towels left on the dryer, the way she'd pour me black coffee even though she drank tea. It wasn't perfect. Some nights she kept to herself. Some mornings I woke up unsure if I should knock. But when I did, she always opened the door. And that was enough. The rain came back one evening, tapping against the window the same way it had the first night. We sat by the glass, watching it blur the streetlights. She rested her head against my shoulder, her breath steady. "I guess you stayed a little longer," she whispered. I smiled, pressing my cheek against her hair. "Guess I did."